My name is Mark, a recording angel. I've been observing this earth since the dawn of creation. The Most High has asked me to share my recordings with you. The following are my records of Earth's earliest patriarchs and prophets, collected in this book, Survivors of the Dark Rebellion, God's Heroes from Adam to David. If today's recording contains situations which might be uncomfortable for younger listeners, I will mark the video with the words Parental Guidance Recommended.
Chapter 6, Part 1, Asenath. Asenath put her arms up as Senetenpu, her maidservant, pulled the sheer white linen dress over her head and slipped it into place. "A perfect fit," the woman said. "Lady Asenath, you look beautiful." The girl twirled around. Now that she was a young lady, she could dress like other women. It also meant she could attend some of the official events with her father. "Oh, still," her maid admonished as she slipped the large wig onto Asenath's head. Until now, Asenath's head had been shaved, except for one lock of hair on the side like all other Egyptian children. But now that she was a woman, she would wear the thick black wigs with gold ornaments. "This one is beautiful, but let's try this other one." Asenath looked at her reflection in the polished brass mirror. The wigs made her head look so big, but they also made her feel much taller. She twirled around again. "What do you think?" she asked Senetenpu. "It looks very nice. Now try this one." It took several tries to choose the one she liked the best. "Now for your makeup," the maid continued. "Sit still and close your eyes. Now, don't squeeze your eyelids together so tightly when I touch them." "But it feels weird," Asenath protested. "Well, it does in the beginning," the woman laughed, "but you'll get used to it. I'll be putting on your makeup until you learn to do it yourself, but you need to practice. No Egyptian woman will be caught outside without her eyeliner on." Asenath nodded. "No, don't nod your head either." She wiped the black smudge off the girl's forehead. "You need to hold perfectly still while I'm doing this." "I'm sorry, I forgot," Asenath said. "I guess there's a lot more to being a woman than I expected. It'll take me a little while to get it all right." Senetenpu laughed. "Take your time. You have plenty of it. After all, you're very young." "I'm not that young," Asenath retorted. "I'm 12 years old." "Yes, you are. Your mother would have been so proud of you if she had lived." The conversation fell silent after that. Asenath didn't remember her mother. In her mind, it had always been just her and father and her maidservant, who had raised her since she was a baby. "Put these bracelets on," Senetenpu continued. "Now, walk across the room and let's see how you do. Keep your shoulders up and your head held high. Now remember, you're the daughter of Potipharah, the high priest of On. You're the first lady of one of the most royal families in Egypt, except for Pharaoh himself. Always remember that when you're in public, and walk with great dignity. No jumping and climbing trees unless you're alone, or with your father, or here at home." Asenath wrinkled her nose. "That's a lot to remember." "Yes, but it'll soon come naturally to you if you practice." "I'm so glad that father's taking me with him today. We're going to a big feast at Potiphar's house in Avarice." The servant woman nodded. "Remember, he's the captain of the king's guard and all of the security for the palace. His family's extremely wealthy and very important." "What's it going to be like, Senetenpu?" "Oh, you'll love Potiphar's house. I was there once before you were born when I was tending your mother. It's a beautiful house with huge pillars and beautiful wall paintings, fountains and gardens." "Will there be anybody there for me to talk to? Are there girls my age?" "I don't know. Depends who else has been invited to the feast. Pharaoh does not have children your age. No do Potiphar, the captain of the guard, and his wife. They have boys, and they're much younger than you are, so they probably won't be at the feast. But you'll have a good time. Remember, you're a woman now, so you can converse with adults. Besides, Potiphar's wife is much younger than he is. You may like her." "I hope so," Asenath said. "This is all so new and exciting, but it would be easier if I had a friend." It seemed like forever until her father finished in the temple. washing and dressing the god Ra and giving him his flowers and breakfast gifts of the day. Then he assigned duties to the other priests who would be caring for the temple while he was away, and headed for his barge docked on the Nile. Asenath and Senetenpu were already aboard, and the girl was eager to leave.
"Father," she cried as she rushed to meet him, "I thought you would never get here."
Her father stopped and just stared at her, speechless.
"What's the matter? Do you like it?"
She trolled round and round. The bracelets on her arms tinkled. "You are beautiful, Asenath." He seemed to be having a hard time talking.
"Do you like this wig? Because if you don't, Senetenpu and I brought the other two along. It was hard to pick out which one was my favorite, but I think I like this one with all the little gold jewels on the ends of all the braids. Isn't it lovely?"
Her father swallowed hard. "In that dress and your wig, you looked so much like your mother that it took my breath away." His daughter smiled shyly.
"I am so glad, because everyone says my mother was a beautiful woman."
"Well, enough of this. Let's take my beautiful woman up to Avarice." The sun was low in the sky, and the Nile reflected all the beautiful colors of sunset as the barge floated up to the dock at Avarice. Her father helped Asenath step onto the dock, and they walked together to meet Potiphar, chief of Pharaoh's guard. The palace official had a younger man with him. The two bowed. "Life, prosperity, and health, priest of On," Potiphar said in the traditional greeting. "Life, prosperity, and health, captain of the god." They smiled. Their greetings were formal, but they were friends. "This is Joseph, as you know, manager of my estates." The slave bowed. "This is Asenath, my daughter," the priest said. His daughter bowed also, feeling self-conscious in her heavy wig. "I have my chariots here, and I have a chariot for you," Potiphar said. "Joseph, will you bring Asenath along? The servants will escort the rest of your belongings and entourage to the house later." The two men strode off, talking quietly about the upcoming festivities. Joseph looked at Asenath. "Would you prefer to ride in a chariot or one of the wagons?"
"Oh, please take me in a chariot. That way we can keep up with Father."
He laughed. "Even if we do, we must ride behind them. That is the proper etiquette." The girl laughed with delight.
"You're right. Father loves to be in the fastest chariot. Even if our horses are faster, we should probably pretend that they're not."
Joseph helped her into the chariot. "Here, you stand in front of me and hang on." Then he tapped the backs of the horses with the reins, and they started on their way. Asenath forgot she was now a young woman, and squealed with delight. She felt as if she was flying, having never gone so fast. She threw her head back and drank in the pleasure of the ride. Soon they arrived at Potiphar's house, and slowed to a stop behind her father and the captain of the guard. She turned to Joseph.
"Thank you."
Looking down at her, he said, "Here, just a minute." Then he straightened her wig, which had been blown slightly off the back of her head and to the side. Her face flushed red with embarrassment.
"I forgot all about that. I haven't been wearing one very long, and I forgot it's there."
Joseph laughed. "It looks very becoming on you, and you'll be just fine. Just don't go on too many chariot rides without hanging on to it."
"I doubt that I'll get to go on very many. Father says chariots are not for women."
And then you probably won't, but there are many other exciting things you'll get to do, so don't worry too much about chariots. Smiling gratefully at him, she stepped to the ground. Her father and Potiphar were still deep in conversation. She walked slowly behind them through the ornate gardens.
"This is beautiful,"
she said to Joseph, who continued to accompany her. Yes, Potiphar's gardens are some of the most lovely in all of Egypt. Asenath wandered off the walkway to look in the lily ponds.
"Look, Hecate, the frog goddess, has come out and is sitting on her lily pad."
These ponds were made for the frogs.
The girl laughed. "She doesn't look very divine. Just a happy little green creature grateful for the sun."
Suddenly she whispered,
"I don't really believe in the frog goddess. I don't think she has any power at all."
"Neither do I," he whispered back. "But don't tell anybody. It's not a popular way to think here in Avarice." The girl drew herself to her full height.
"Anyone should know that the sun god is much more powerful than the frog god anyway. Look at her. I believe she's worshipping the sun."
"She's not going to do much longer if you get any closer," he said. Then the frog leaped off the lily pad and into the water.
"Oh!"
Asenath said in surprise. "The frogs here are a little shy. However, if you bring a few crumbs from dinner, you can coax them out. The fish come up and beg too."
"Really? I'll remember to do that.
Try it. It'll be fun. It'll work better at the other end of the pool, there where the lily pads are. A fountain at this end flows in the evenings, so the frogs like the other end where it's a little quieter.
Thank you so much for showing the pond to me.
Yeah, you'll want some things like that to do while you're here. The feasts sometimes last late into the night. They might not be as fun for you as they are for the others. Asenath nodded. Grown-ups could be so dull sometimes. She looked at Joseph. He seemed to understand the kinds of things she would like.
Do you have a sister?
She shyly asked. He smiled at her with his mouth, but his eyes looked sad. Yes, but she lives far away from here.
Do you miss her?
Sometimes. She and I used to do things like this, although when we did, I was the younger one, and it was her telling me the secrets.
I wish I could meet her,
Asenath said. Joseph looked at her for a long time. Yes, I imagine that you would enjoy her company. Both of you are surrounded by so many men, you probably would have a lot in common.
Well, we'll just have to do it sometime.
Let me show you where you and your father will be staying, he said, changing the subject. Your servant will be along shortly with your things, and she'll help you get settled. Meanwhile, we have servants here, and I'll have one of them assist you. She followed him down a long pillared colonnade that led to a suite of rooms. Your father will occupy that room there, and your servant will stay with you in this one, so at least you'll know where to find him.
If he's ever in there,
the girl sighed.
When he's on one of these trips, he's always running around with the captain of the guard, or Pharaoh, or the general of the army, or someone else.
Joseph laughed. Yes, that's why he's here.
Life, prosperity, and health,
she said, and then disappeared into her room. The tall female slave bowed low. I'm Anexi, and will serve you while you reside in the house of Potiphar. Asenath spun around. She had taken off her wig and flung it on the table, and was looking at a brightly colored wall painting. Coloring with embarrassment, she reached for the wig. The slave smiled. Don't be nervous. Many of the women take their wigs off when they are in their own apartments. They can be very heavy and hot after a while. The girl sighed with relief.
Yes, and I'm not used to wearing one.
I understand, the older woman said. Where I came from, we never wore them. I had to get used to it when I arrived here. Once you adjust, it's not so bad. Asenath relaxed a little.
You're not from here?
Well, I'm from here now. Most of the staff in the house of Potiphar were purchased in the slave market, so we are from many places. I was of the Midianite tribe, but was sold into slavery after our village was raided and burned by another.
Do you miss your family?
Yes, Anexi replied, but not as much as I did at first. I was just a little girl when I came here. That was a long time ago. The girl nodded, then she thought of something else.
Is Joseph the son of Potiphar?
The older woman started to laugh and then caught herself. No, the wife of Potiphar has 2 sons, but they are very young.
Oh, but he seems to be important here, and he's so nice.
The older woman smiled. Yes, everyone has strong opinions about Joseph. They either love him or hate him.
Hate him?
Asenath replied in surprise.
Why?
Well, the older woman lowered her voice confidentially. When Joseph first came here, he was only a young man. You never saw such a homesick puppy. But he was purchased in the slave market just like the rest of us. He just always acted like he was, well, better than us.
Really? He doesn't seem to be haughty.
Not that, just more intelligent. Sophisticated, perhaps. He's just quite a thinker. Most of us gave up thinking when we were sold. Slaves do as they are told. Thinking is not a thing that is particularly safe to do. The girl could understand that. No one liked an opinionated slave.
But Potiphar doesn't treat him like a slave. Why is that?
Joseph works very hard, Anexi explained, and he's very intelligent. He's also proved to be more honest and trustworthy than most, and worked up through the ranks of the slaves in a very short period of time. When Potiphar found out that he had different ideas about agriculture and managing the farm and the crops, he let him experiment. The yield was so impressive that he put him in charge of all the farmland. He's also over the household, an unusual thing for our man. He manages all of Potiphar's things now. Our master ceased regarding him as a slave long ago, and now treats him as a son. Until recently, when Potiphar married his current wife, he had no children. I suppose Joseph seemed to be the son he always wanted.
So why do some people hate him?
I suppose it's jealousy, Anexi said after a moment. They feel that he's no better than any of the other slaves, yet he gets treated like family, and is honored and trusted and put over them when they were here first. Asenath understood. She had seen plenty of that in her father's household too. The slaves all seemed to have a pecking order, and if someone didn't fit in, everyone would pick on them until they did. Anyway, the woman said, such things are not for me to discuss. We all treat Joseph with respect, whether we like him or not.
But you do respect him, don't you?
Of course. Now let's get you ready for dinner. Would you like a bath first? Asenath pushed the food around her plate. She had eaten all she wanted more than an hour ago, and yet the feast dragged on. Her father and the captain of the guard continued to chat about boring things such as irrigation and crop yields. I've never been that much interested in farming, Potiphar said to her father. It's something one must do to support the household and provide food, but digging in the dirt has never appealed to me. The girl's father nodded. As a priest, he liked staying indoors and keeping his hands clean too. Neither man cared much for agriculture. So it was a great blessing when Joseph came up with all of these great ideas, he continued. I guess for one who doesn't believe in worshipping Ra, the sun god, or Hapi, the god of the annual flooding, one has to do other things to make sure the crops grow well. He expanded our irrigation system and planted the crops in different places during different seasons, and I don't know what else, but it has dramatically increased yield. Amazing. Yes, and he's done amazing things with the cattle. I've become a wealthy man thanks to this slave of mine. Potiphar, priest of On, nodded. It's no small wonder, then, that you reward him with the status of a family member. I treat him well. He controls all of my land and estates. I feel that is little repayment for the wealth he's brought me, and I've never had a slave that I felt I could fully trust until Joseph. Asenath's father nodded. Trustworthy slaves were few and far between, and trustworthy friends, too, for that matter. I plan to give him his freedom, and a home and a wife, Potiphar continued. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. The priest nodded. He probably came from a well-bred background. The palace official thought for a second. I suppose so, though I never really inquired. But he was quite sophisticated even as a younger man. When he came, he already could read and write Canaanite script. It has been a great asset to him as a manager. As the men continued to talk business, Asenath yawned. She wished that there were other girls to talk to. Potiphar's wife sat across the table from her, but she had ignored Asenath since her arrival. She had been too busy flirting with the other men seated near her. When Asenath looked around, she saw that everyone else seemed to be enjoying the feast. Quietly, she slipped from the table and left the room.
No one will notice anyway, she thought, and I've had enough of being a woman for the evening.
Racing down the hall, she went out into the courtyard. A full moon made it very easy to see where she was going. She sat on the mud brick wall above the frog pond and watched the water ripple. After feeding the fish the crumbs she had saved from the table, she headed slowly toward the stables and slipped inside. You're a pretty fellow, she said as she stroked the nose of the horse next to her. You look so big, but you were so gentle today. The horse snorted in apparent agreement. I had a wonderful time when we were chariot riding here. That was the most exciting thing I've done in my whole life. As she continued to stroke the animal, suddenly a low chuckle made her jump. I'm sure Charger appreciates all the attention, a voice said in the darkness, but this isn't a safe place for you to come alone, especially at night. Come here, the man insisted. It's just me. He stepped out from the darkness to where she could see him. Oh, Joseph, you scared me. Asenath, you scared me. When you disappeared from the banquet, I had the servants check everywhere in the house for you. No one could find you. Potiphar would be very upset if you got lost while you were here in his house. I'm not lost, she said indignantly. I just came out here because it was boring in there. Joseph laughed loudly. I'm sure that's true, although I would never say that out loud in there. But you cannot come out here at night. It can be dangerous, and your safety is very important to everyone. Well, she said, I'm safe now because you're here. Yes, I suppose you are. Then good. May I talk to Charger some more? Sometimes animals can be the best company. I've spent a lot of time talking to them myself. Really? How long have you been here with Potiphar? Several years. I was only 17 when I came. Asenath thought a moment. Tell me about your family. That can hardly interest you, my lady, daughter of the priest of On. My family were just shepherds. My father says that in other places shepherds are well respected, and that some of them are even wealthy. It sounds strange to me, but he said it is so. She could see Joseph nod in the moonlight. Your father is right to say so. My father headed a shepherd clan. He had inherited great flocks and was wealthy.
Then why are you a slave?
She blurted. Then, realizing what she had said, added,
You don't have to talk about it, if you don't want to.
Joseph was quiet for several minutes. I had a lot of older brothers, he said finally, and there was a lot of jealousy in the family. It was a problem. I guess I did not understand how great a problem at the time.
So what does that have to do with you being a slave?
I was my father's favorite, the one from his favorite wife, so I suppose the jealousy was there a little from the beginning, but it grew as I got older.
So your brothers had something to do with you being here?
Yes, most of them were much older. They were in charge of the flocks. Because our flocks were so large, sometimes they had to take them many miles to find adequate pasture. Asenath nodded, even though she knew nothing about shepherding at all. They had been gone for several weeks, and Father started worrying about them. He packed them some supplies and had me see if I could go find them to make sure they were well. It was hard to find them. They were supposed to be at Dothan, and I went there, but they had gone, even though Father had not negotiated grazing rights anywhere else. A man there told me where to go look, and I continued my journey. When I finally found them, they weren't happy to see me. A strange tone crept into his voice.
What did they do?
They pushed me around a bit and threw me into a pit. I was afraid they were going to leave me there to die. Then a group of Midianite merchants came through. My brothers pulled me out and sold me to them for 20 pieces of silver, and here I am.
You are lucky you were bought by Potiphar, Asenath announced. He is one of the wealthiest men in Egypt.
I don't consider it luck, he said softly.
This broadcast has come from the book Survivors of the Dark Rebellion by Sally Pierson Dillon, with permission from the Review and Herald Publishing Association. This book and the rest of the series, War of the Ages, can be purchased by going to www.adventistbookcenter.com or by calling 1-800-765-6955. I'm your narrator, Austin Backus, and this audio project is a gift to you from my free Christian book ministry, RXF 1888. Please visit our website, www.rxf1888.com, to request free Christian books for both kids and adults. And join us here again for more stories from Mark the Recording Angel.